I do want to welcome everyone. It's so good to see so many people registered for today. That's absolutely fantastic engagement. And, right across the sector. I do want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land from which I'm joining you today. Our office and my home office is on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I want to acknowledge also emerging leaders as well as any other First Nations. I've got things popping up on the screen all over the place. Any other First Nations people who are with us today. The purpose of today, I want to start by, before diving into the legislation and your obligations, I really want to start with something that might actually surprise you. Did you know that women are 47% more likely to be seriously injured in a car accident and 17% more likely to die in a car accident than men? This isn't because women are worse drivers. In fact, we know that men are much more likely to have car accidents. It is because vehicle safety testing, so testing the vehicle's safety, has been done using crash test dummies that are based on a typical male body. And that means that if you've got a typical male crash test dummy that you are using, it is further away from the steering wheel, its head is higher and therefore further away from airbags. And it was only in 2023 that the US brought in a regulation requiring its vehicle manufacturers to use anatomically correct female crash test dummies when testing vehicle safety. And in fact, the only company that's been doing that, I'm told, for a very long time is Volvo. Car manufacturers around the world have been using male crash test dummies. And so although women are less likely to have car accidents than men are more likely to have car accidents, women are much more likely to be seriously injured and much more likely to die because they hit the steering wheel, the airbag smashes, explodes in their faces. Now, this is not a conspiracy against women. It is unconscious bias in action, and it's exactly why the Gender Equality Act exists. And today's session is about helping you turn that unconscious bias into conscious action. So this is an introductory briefing for those new to the Gender Equality Act or those who need a refresher. And you will leave with an understanding of why this matters, why this work matters and why it's urgent, the role of the Commission and my role as Commissioner, your legislative obligations as a duty holder, and what success looks like. Some examples of what success looks like and how to achieve it. What are the fundamentals for getting there? We've got some time at the end for questions, but because we've got a large group today, I encourage you to please post your questions in the chat rather than raising your hand. If you see a question that you're keen to have answered as well, then give it a like or a love, whatever you want, so that we know what to prioritise. So those questions that get the most likes, we'll prioritise first and then we'll get to the others. So although we might not answer everything live, we will share comprehensive resources and follow-up information with you after the session. And we're also recording this session. And so we'll share that along with the follow-up information. So why does this work matter? Well, collectively, organisations under the Act employ more than 450,000 Victorians, roughly 1 in every 8 workers in the state. Your decisions, the decisions that you make in your organisations have a ripple effect through families, through communities, and through the broader community. And that's important. Gender equality isn't just an ideal, it's an absolutely fundamental human right and a legal requirement. The Gender Equality Act is our tool to turn this into measurable reality. So consider the impact. If you close a pay gap, a young woman might see a clear career path instead of a ceiling. If you redesign parental leave and a new father takes caregiving time he never thought was possible. If you run rigorous gender impact assessments and public resources fund services that work for everyone, not just an average male default, as we saw in the vehicle example that I just gave you, then that's what the change can look like. And the data tells the story. In Victoria's public sector, the overall gender pay gap remains at 10.1%, with significant variations across sectors. Health at 31.9%, police and emergency services at 10.5%, and local government achieving the smallest gap at 3.5%. Women comprise 66% of our public sector workforce, but hold only 48% of leadership positions. And women are 8 in 10 parental leave takers, with their leave lasting up to 14 times longer than men. And sexual harassment rates are increasing, particularly affecting women and gender diverse people. So the Gender Equality Act is Australia's first Gender Equality Act, and I'm the first commissioner of the Gender Equality Act, implementing the Gender Equality Act, and I'm now in my second term. And Victoria recognised that good intentions alone weren't enough. We needed legislation. So as I said, the Act is the first of its kind. It took effect in 2021. It formally embeds intersectionality as well, recognising that gender equality can't be achieved while any group is marginalised. And that's really important because we know that overlapping forms of discrimination interact and amplify disadvantage. So if you're a woman with disability, then you have compounded discrimination there. If you are a woman of colour, then you will experience potentially discrimination, not just because of your gender, but because of the colour of your skin. And we need to take account of the fact that gender inequality isn't experienced the same way by everyone. You've got 4 key obligations that form a continuous cycle under the legislation. The first of these is to conduct a workplace gender audit every 2 years at a specific time. So you've got to capture data on 7 key gender equality indicators, and I'll talk about them. You've got to develop a gender equality action plan that uses that data and any inequality that is found in your organisation to develop strategies to fix that inequality. And you have to undertake gender impact assessments, and they are putting a gender lens, and where possible an intersectional gender lens, over your policies, programs and services that have a direct and significant impact on the public. So, and then you have to report on your progress every 2 years. So provide another lot of data and tell us how you're doing every 2 years. So think of it as a measure, plan, assess, report, repeat cycle. And we're just coming up to the second round for our original duty holders that were there in 2021. They've done 1 cycle already of a gender equality action plan, a progress report. They're just coming up for their final progress reports in May, and then their new gender equality action plans are due in May. But I'll get to all of those details in a minute. So what does my office do? Well, our job as the regulator is to ensure that you meet your obligations and that you drive real change. We have a role to educate and guide you. We publish templates for you to put your gender equality action plans into and your progress reports into. We deliver training like today's session so that you know exactly what to do. And we check your progress reports, your gender equality action plans, and your data for compliance. And then we seek to remedy if you're not compliant. And we do that for every audit, for every GEEP, for every progress report. We do that intensively. And we will provide you with feedback about what you've done well and what you need to fix. And we work with you to fix non-compliance before it becomes a problem, or at least we try to. But we will enforce where needed. So we'll send compliance notices. We've got the capacity to publicly name and shame organisations that aren't doing what they need to under the legislation. And if all else fails, I can go to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal and get an order directing a duty holder to comply with the legislation. I don't think I'm ever going to need those compliance tools, but they're there. And they say, I think, that gender equality isn't a nice to have anymore under this legislation. It's a must have. But guidance does come first. So what about the real world impact? Why this isn't just bureaucracy? Since the Act's introduction, we've seen some real change. And here's some examples. The city of Port Phillip discovered that they had 3 men's toilets in their local government area. They had 3 men's toilets for every 2 women's toilets facilities. And that is despite the fact that women take 2.3 times longer to use the toilet. Now, that is not, I can assure you, because women sit on the toilet scrolling through their Instagram feeds. It is because they can't use urinals. They have to use a cubicle. They have to take their clothes up and down. They have to change pads and tampons because they have periods. They get urinary tract infections at 4 times the rate of men. They often have small children that they're taking to the toilet with them. And all of that means that equal toilet space ends up given to men and women ends in incredibly long queues, as many of you will have experienced outside women's toilets, et cetera, and of course means that if you have 3 men's toilets for every 2 women's toilets, you actually have an unfair situation. So their gender impact assessment led to a complete redesign of their 10-year toilet strategy. The Kingston City Council is another example. They introduced shared parental leave, and the result was that men's leave increased from under 2 weeks to over 10 weeks on average, parental leave for men, significantly closing that gap with women. So it's not over, but it's a really big step in the right direction. And TAFE Gippsland removed some key selection criteria that were barriers after data showed that many job applicants abandoned their applications at a particular point because they couldn't meet certain criteria. And when they looked at those criteria, they realised that that was a barrier they didn't need to have, that those criteria weren't very necessary. And so they took them out, and now they've got a lot more candidates. They're now successfully filling really hard to recruit positions. So it's good for them. Now, I'm just going to pause for a moment because I think Hanan's going to bring up some slides and we can talk about the practical details of your obligations. So I cannot see the screen. So can Hanan tell me when they are up?
They're up now, Nikki.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So let's talk about timing that matters. You are required, as I said, to submit an audit every 2 years, and the upcoming deadline for that is the 1st of December 2025. Your audit will cover data from the previous financial year, unless you're a university. They have a slightly different audit timeline, data collection timeline. And the audit will show where inequality is in your organisation. And then this will be used, as I said, to inform your next Gender Equality Action Plan and your progress report. And those Gender Equality Action Plans, your GEAP, as we call it, is due on the 1st of May 2026, and your progress reports fall into place alongside that. So they're also due at that time. So let's go into a bit more detail about your obligations. So if we could have the next slide, please, Hanan. So the audit is our evidence base. It's a structured review of your workforce data and employee experience feedback measured against 7 key gender equality indicators. And those indicators are the gender composition at all levels of your organisation, the gender composition of the governing body or your board or your council, in the case of local government. If you don't have one, we can talk about that. You can ignore that criteria, that key indicator. Gender pay gaps in your organisation, sexual harassment, your recruitment and promotion practices, your leave and flexible work, and gendered segregation within your organisation. So where you might have equal numbers of men and women overall, of all genders overall, the people of particular genders might actually be concentrated into particular jobs, into particular occupations. And so that's gendered segregation. Collecting data on these indicators helps you better understand gender inequality in your organisation. Think of the audit as a bit of a health check for equality. It tells us where the gaps are, how big they are, and who they affect. So it's really important. The audit helps us turn opinions into facts, so our gender equality action plans target the right issues. And the next slide, please, Hanan. So Gender equality action plans are basically your 4-year strategic roadmaps for gender equality, a plan to make meaningful changes to improve gender equality in your workplace. They will translate the findings of each organisation's audit into clear targets, strategies and measures for closing gender pay gaps, improving leadership balance, boosting flexibility, preventing discrimination and sexual harassment, and so on. Your gender equality action plans also spell out the timelines, the accountability measures, and all the resourcing so that you and us can track your progress and do that publicly. And you need to publicly report on all of this. So together, they're turning your data into practical steps that embed gender equality in every policy, culture, and decision-making process across the public sector. Your next slide. So gender impact assessments, as I've already talked about, they're about making sure that your policies, programs and services are designed for everyone, people of all genders. They are required on every new or up for review policy, program or service with a direct and significant impact on the public. And this is because public resources must be allocated fairly, including ensuring equitable outcomes for people of all genders. It's absolutely vital that the public sector does lead by example in promoting gender equality and reducing gendered harms by undertaking gender impact assessments. And this is why they're one of the most promising tools in our pursuit of gender equality. If you haven't read it, I absolutely recommend to you Caroline Criado Perez's book, Invisible Women, Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed by for Men. It provides incredible and numerous examples of program, policy and service decisions that have overlooked women. And it's a great primer for gender impact assessments. She's assembled compelling statistics from how most offices are 5 degrees too cold for women because the formula to determine their temperature was developed in the 1960s based on the metabolic rate of a 40-year-old 70-kilo man, and women's metabolisms are slower. So pretty much all offices that you go into, you'll see women freezing and with jumpers and cardigans and scarves and men in shirt sleeves. It's not designed for women's bodies. As we've already discussed, she talks about the important reasons why women take up to 2.3 times longer to use the toilet than men, and hence those massive, unfair, time-wasting toilet queues outside of public venues for women. This is a man's world because those who built it did not take gender differences into account. And I've already mentioned vehicle safety testing and the impacts, the devastating impacts that's had for women. Also, workplace safety regulations. Many personal protective equipment standards, such as for healthcare, which is 77% women, construction, firefighting, defence and policing, all of that PPE is based on male body sizes. That's changing, but only slowly and only recently. Women are often forced to wear oversized goggles, masks, gloves, boots, and bulletproof vests, which reduce their mobility and increase the safety risks for them in often already high-risk jobs. Insane. In the medical research and drug regulation field, we know that clinical trials have historically been conducted on men with results that were then applied to women despite differences in how men's and women's bodies metabolize drugs. This has led to drugs being less effective or even dangerous for women. For example, women are more likely to experience severe side effects from common medications like sleeping pills and painkillers. A recent report by Monash University found Australian women are being let down by a lack of consideration for gender and sex in healthcare guidelines, leading to entrenched gender inequities. Other recent studies have found that women are less likely to have chronic pain acknowledged and treated. They're significantly less likely than men to have their stroke recognised by paramedics, and therefore less likely to be managed according to the ambulance pre-hospital stroke care protocol. And that was a 2023 piece of research using New South Wales Ambulance Service. And they are more likely to be misdiagnosed or discharged from hospitals during a serious medical event. We have to take gender impact assessments seriously, because from medical emergencies such as heart attack and stroke to mental health care to gender and sex bias, in everything that we can think of in health, it's leading to poorer health outcomes for women and gender diverse people, including delayed diagnosis and treatment. And I am certain this isn't a conspiracy to exclude or discriminate against women. It is unconscious bias and unthinking exclusion by researchers and designers of products, programs, policies, and services. And so under the Gender Equality Act, that stops. It has devastating impacts on women and has had devastating impacts on women. And unless we crunch the numbers and take positive steps, this will just continue. So we've had more than 1,500 gender impact assessments reported to us on public policies, programs and services to date. 75% of them have led directly to actions that promote gender equality. So that's really powerful. So whether it's in regional councils, catchment management authorities, government departments, museums or universities, these assessments have shone a light on systemic issues and paved the way for real improvements. So next slide, please, Hanan. Progress reports. These are about public accountability and continuous improvement. Duty holders, every duty holder organisation must show reasonable and material progress against those 7 workplace gender equality indicators every 2 years. Or you have to explain why you haven't made progress, and you have to have a good reason, and that's one of the reasons that are identified in the legislation. Your progress report is your organisation's public update on how well you are meeting the goals that you set in your gender equality action plan, what gender impact assessments you've conducted, and where you've improved and which strategies still need work, any new challenges you discovered as well. It's compliance checked, as I said, by the Commission to ensure that progress has been made. It shows where you've improved, which strategies still need new work, and as I said, any new challenges you've discovered. The report also demonstrates to staff and the wider community how you're using data to address issues such as pay gaps and underrepresentation in leadership. You must publish your Gender Equality Action Plan, your data and your progress reports on your own website, but we publish them on our website as well. So they are there for everyone to see, your own employees, members of the public, the government, etc. Publishing helps build trust and drives that steady improvement that we absolutely want to see. In February 2024, we had the first progress reports under the Gender Equality Action Plans from 21-22. We saw 100% submission rate for both progress audits and progress reports, and on the whole, reports demonstrated good intentions across most public sector organisations. But despite good intentions, it's clear that there's still a lot of work to be done to build knowledge and capacity. Many duty holders are still struggling with key concepts such as intersectional gender inequality, pay gaps or occupational segregation, and quite a few are still struggling with GAAs. Now, I think that's the end of the slides, but I'll go from here and talk about the insights from the progress reporting overall. So we released preliminary analysis from the progress reports in December last year, and all audit data and reports are on our website. The latest data shows mixed progress. So most industries reduced gender pay gaps, all but one. So that's positive progress. Women in CEOs roles increased from 39% to 44%. That's an improvement. Men's parental leave increased from 3.9 to 5.2 weeks. Now that's small, but significant difference. We're not going to have a party about that, but it's in the right direction. But unfortunately, sexual harassment rates increased, particularly for women and gender diverse people. So obviously that's concerning, and that's something I'm absolutely determined we focus on over the next few years. That sexual harassment is unacceptable for anyone. We'll be releasing further detailed insights from the data. I think the one's coming out today or tomorrow, another one maybe later this week, I'm not sure, but sometime in the very near future, you will have insights on the pay gap and sexual harassment and bringing together the best research about what to do about those things as well. But you're probably interested in what high-performing organisations are doing differently. And we know from research that several things are really key to high performance. First and foremost, leadership commitment. Sustained and genuine commitment from leadership is crucial for achieving gender equality outcomes. Secondly, really focusing on your data, particularly your gender pay gaps. So where are the inequalities showing up? What's causing them? And then implementing targeted strategies to reduce them, and then being transparent about that. Accountability is absolutely key here. Every organisation that reports under the Gender Equality Act must show real measurable progress every 2 years, as I said. And if they're failing on this, I will call this out. Board and executive diversity is really crucial as well. The best performing organisations have higher representation of women on their boards and occupying management and leadership roles. You also need comprehensive policies and strategies. The best performing organisations have integrated gender equality into their core business strategies. It's not an add-on. It's part of their business strategy, their policies, their practices, and it's part of the design of their products and services, rather than treating diversity, equity, and inclusion as separate initiatives. The use of KPIs and targets is also really critical. So setting yourself specific targets and specific key performance indicators has been really effective in driving change and improving gender equality at all organisation levels. Finally, I want to touch very briefly on my dispute resolution powers. The Act gives me formal powers to step in and help resolve systemic gender equality disputes. I can step in when your EBA, your enterprise agreement or workplace determination, has a clause in it that names the commissioner as a dispute resolution pathway. And many public sector EBAs have that now. The issue must be systemic. It has to affect a class or group of employees, not just one, and relate to one or more of the Act's workplace gender equality indicators. So that's pay, promotion, flexible work, sexual harassment, and so on. You have to have taken some internal steps first, so the parties must make a genuine effort to resolve the matter in-house before referring it to me. But any effective employees, their union or the employer can lodge an application provided that enabling clause exists. I can't handle individual grievances, for example, one person's classification appeal or a single harassment investigation. They must be systemic. So it must be impacting, as I said, a class or group of employees. Those individual grievances need to go through the employer's normal processes or bodies like the Victorian Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commission, the Fair Work Commission, or the Australian Human Rights Commission. You can find out much more about the process of dispute resolution on our website, though, and we can send a link in our follow-up to you from this session. So your next steps. Here's what to do after today. Immediate step, review your upcoming audit requirements due on the 1st of December 2025, and check our website for all the guidance and all the templates about what to do there. Short term, you need to engage leadership in genuine commitment to this work. If you need me to help with that, I'm absolutely happy to come and talk to you and talk to your team and talk to your leadership and talk to your board. That's a regular part of my job. You need to start planning your data collection. You need to book follow-up training for your team using our on-demand resources. And then ongoing, you need to integrate gender equality into business planning, not just HR processes. You need to use that data to drive decisions, not assumptions, and celebrate progress and learn from setbacks. And remember, gender equality is everybody's business. When you meet your obligations, you don't just comply with the law, you protect your workforce, you strengthen organisational performance, and you build a fairer Victoria. The organisations leading this change are seeing real benefits: better recruitment, improved staff satisfaction, stronger community trust, and measurable performance improvements. We're always looking to improve these sessions. So now we'll drop a short feedback survey in the chat at the end, and your input will help us shape future sessions. And as I said, you'll receive a follow-up resource email with resources that we've mentioned today, plus those sessions recording. So please feel free to share that with anyone who couldn't attend. I think we're now ready for your questions. So
Yes.
I'm going to go over to you.
Thank you, Nikki. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground, and there are some interesting questions that are popping up in the chat here. The first one from Doxy. Are you starting to hear conversations around menopause and the impact it can have on some women in the workplace, and measures some organisations have introduced to support them through it?
Absolutely, we are. In fact, it is coming up in every conversation I have with duty holder organisations. So I spend part of my week every week pretty much going out and meeting with duty holder organisations. And like I said, this is coming up at every one of those meetings now. It is certainly something that is on our radar. It's not included in the legislation, but we have got a review of the legislation coming up. And it is something that is definitely on our radar. And our director, Alice Dunt, just had a meeting with some stakeholders in that regard just recently. So it is something that we're thinking about. It's certainly something that's on a lot of organisations' radar.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing it starting to pop up a lot more too, with some inquiries that we're getting. I've got another question from Liz. Does the audit capture intersectional data? How many women of colour with disabilities, etc., and where they are in the structure of your organisation?
We do ask you to provide that data where you have it. So yes, the answer is yes. A lot of organisations don't yet have that data, and some organisations that do have that data, it can't be used because the numbers are too small, and so that we have to, for privacy reasons, keep that data hidden. It doesn't stop you using it yourselves. You've got to take account of privacy policies and so forth. But yes, we do collect it. We ask for it. We will be starting to crack down on that, the expectation from organisations that they are collecting this data. We do have guidance on this. We've got a report that we put out in 2023 called Intersectionality at Work, where we analysed the data that we did have from duty holder organisations from their 2021 audit. And so at the back of that, you'll find some incredible outcomes that we discovered in that report. But we've also got some guidance in that report about how to go about collecting that kind of data, because there are issues, obviously, for organisations wanting to collect that. But yes, absolutely, that's part of the data collection.
Thanks, Nikki, and we'll share that report in the follow-up as well. I can just see a comment here from Michelle saying that Fire Rescue Victoria has developed a menopause policy, and then Celia has asked if they can share. So
excellent.
I'll leave that for everyone here to organise. But I've got quite a few more questions. Let me go. This is from Kate. How should we interpret direct and significant impact on the community? For example, our client group is relatively small and required to interact with our service. For example, their engagement with us is mandated through the justice system. Would policies and programs that relate to this group meet the threshold for direct and significant impact on the community and therefore require GIAs?
I can't give you specific advice about your specific situation because I'd want to look into that a lot more carefully. But we do have guidance about how to assess direct and significant. That is on our website. We can send that out as well with the kit that comes out to you after this. I would say take a broad view of that. So I would ask, even if you don't think it's hugely significant, why not put a gender lens over it anyway? Because you're not going to do any harm by doing that. And if it's, a little bit indirect rather than direct, I would still ask, why not put a gender lens over it? You also have a general duty under the legislation to promote gender equality more broadly. So, even if it's not technically, doesn't technically meet the criteria, I would still say put a gender lens over it. But you'll need to look at that guidance yourself. And when you've looked at that, if you feel like you need some more help to understand that in your particular situation, then you can reach out to us through our inquiries email, and we'll get someone to work through that with you. But do read that first. It'll be more helpful for us coming to it with you having that background information.
Thanks, Nikki. I've got another question here from Shannon. What's the best way to show if we can't show statistically? For example, we have implemented gender affirming and equity encouraging policies.
Yeah, it's really good if you're at we've got, and I don't know how this applies in this situation. If we've got data from you showing, something that you want to address on gender equality, and you've put a lot of policies, programs, and services into place, or put a lot of initiatives into place to address that, then we'd want to see data showing that it has done what you've achieved. So you've got to have some way of showing that that it's had the desired effect. So just putting policies, programs, and services into place, that's an interim measure, but at some point you've got to have some measurable outcomes. So you're going to have to think of ways that you can measure the impact of that. Most of the obligations under the legislation, those 7 key indicators are what you absolutely need to focus on. So, the pay gap, sexual harassment, the recruitment and promotion practices, access to leave and flexible work, gendered segregation in your organisation, women in leadership, all of those things. Be guided in your actions by those 7 key indicators, because they are the ones that you will be assessed for compliance under the legislation. You can do a lot of other things as well, but if you're in a resource constrained environment, which most of our duty holders are, then I encourage you to really hone in on those 7 key indicators where you will have data to show that you are making progress. It doesn't mean other things aren't important, but those 7 key indicators are where we are going to be looking for you to actually demonstrate progress.
Thanks, Nikki. I've got another question here from Marie. There are persistent gender disparities in STEM fields. If our upcoming progress report shows no measurable improvements in gender equity in STEM occupations, what are the implications? Specifically, will this lack of process result in non-compliance with the gender segregation indicator? And could it also lead to an overall non-compliance assessment?
Possibly. There are, we understand the gendered segregation indicator is going to be a really difficult one to shift. We want, if you haven't made any numerical progress, we want to know what you are doing, what it is that you've put in place to actually make that progress over time. So if you haven't made numerical progress, as I said, you need to be able to explain why. And there are key ways that you can do that in the Act. And one of those is we've tried really hard. We just haven't seen the data shift yet. But here's what we've put in place to actually ensure that the data shifts at some point in the future. So that one, we do understand it's difficult to shift. We also take, if you're working in a regional or or in a rural area, we understand, that is a difficult environment as well. Those are the sorts of things that you can tell us have impacted your capacity to make change in this area. What we won't accept is this is a difficult thing to change and we haven't made any progress. We want to know what your organisation is putting in place to actually drive change in the future. And as long as you do that, and we will assess that, if we feel you haven't done enough, we'll come back to you. You can argue with us. You get the chance to come back and say, no, we think we have. But ultimately, if we don't feel you have done enough, then you may be non-compliant. You'll be non-compliant on that indicator, which does give you a non-compliance overall. And then we can take whatever action we think is necessary. So that would start with having a conversation with the leaders in your organisation about what should be happening. in that space to drive change, and getting potentially a written undertaking from them to undertake those actions, to make sure that progress happens in the future. It's only where we get repeated non-compliance and lack of progress over time or we're just not getting any response from the organisation that we might take further steps. So hopefully that reassures you, but we are looking to see some definitive actions in that regard.
Thanks, Nikki. I have a question here from Chelsea. Can we use the Commission's training resources, for example, GIA training, and put it on our organisation's learning portal for staff to access?
I think so. I don't have any problem with that. I don't know what the technical problems with that might be, but our resources are there for our duty holders, in fact, for anyone to use. We are not precious. You can share them. Gender equality doesn't stop with our stakeholders, with our duty holders. It's, a global problem. So anyone anywhere can use the resources. So if you have technical challenges with doing so, let us know. But by all means, share far and wide. We're happy for you to do that.
Yeah, and we've got lots of resources, so we will be sharing them after this session towards the end of the week. So you can put as many of them up as you like. So I have a question here from Reese. I know this was addressed at a recent webinar held by MAV in regard to reporting. We are a small council who have been provided no additional resourcing and essentially reporting is tapped onto our role with no support, whether this be funding or time to support significant improvement. I do my best to promote the GIAs and our obligations under the Act. However, we are massively under-resourced, and this is a huge area of challenge for us. I'm aware that other small councils are in the same boat. What is the Commission doing to throw some extra support to smaller organisations, or what encouragement is pushed to executive to make this a priority?
Yeah. Okay. As I said, I spend a lot of my time on the road visiting small, rural, regional councils, and I do hear this a lot. The legislation does require duty holders to resource their gender equality action plan, its implementation, and the outcomes adequately. That is a requirement under the legislation. And I spend a lot of time speaking to CEOs and heads of boards and mayors about this. So your organisation's leaders must reprioritise their budget if necessary to make this happen. Now, we're not expecting small organisations to do the same as big organisations. Obviously, things need to scale for smaller organisations. So have a look at your data, concentrate on where you see the most kind of significant challenges, where you've got pay gaps. Actually, local governments the best sector for pay gaps. They're doing much better than any other. Sexual harassment might be a problem, etc. And think about what it is that you can do to turn that around. We will not accept that you don't have the resources to do the actions that are required under the Gender Equality Act. You must get resources, and leaders are responsible for that. But we're not expecting you to throw mega bucks at this if you're a tiny organisation in a rural or regional area. So that is part of the conversation that you have with us when you provide us with your progress report. That can be a consideration for us. And we actually ask that question on the front cover of the templates for the progress report and for the Gender Equality Action Plan. What's the size of your organisation? Are you in a rural regional area, et cetera, et cetera? What other things have impacted? We've had organisations that have, been dealing with floods in their community or bushfires. We understand that these things might throw you off course a bit. So we do take all of that into consideration. I know what it's like to run a tiny organisation. My team are 14 full-time equivalents, including me. So I absolutely understand the resources challenge. We have that ourselves as a commission. There is nothing that we can do more than what we are doing to provide you with support and guidance and education and training. We cannot provide you with funding to do this work. Gender equality is, as I said, it's a human right issue. It shouldn't be this way. It affects 50% of the population. We absolutely have to address this now. And maybe that means that we reprioritize other things to do that.
Thanks, Nikki. And that's, it's definitely a reoccurring theme that we hear a lot, but it's really great to know that it really does sit in the hands of leaders to prioritize the work.
And I have to say that to give you reassurance, because I know there's a lot of passionate people that are doing this work on the ground, and it's relentless. It comes on top of, their ordinary jobs often. And it may be that you do the best you can and still you can't get your organisation to be compliant. We send our feedback directly to CEOs and to board chairs, and that is where we go for accountability. If you are not resourced properly and you're doing this stuff on top of your extra job, that's the responsibility of your CEO and your board chair. And that's where we will take action. So sometimes organisations that haven't funded this work properly have to fail to kind of realise, to get that wake-up call that they need to fund this properly. So you killing yourself to do this work, to try and get your organisation over the line, might actually not be the best approach in many situations. Your organisation might need to accept that it's not okay to treat people like that, and this work has to be done properly and funded properly.
Thanks, Nikki. I have a question. We've got about 7 minutes left, and we've got a few more questions, which I think we'll be able to get through. I have Charlotte asking, is there any information or learnings available that might provide some solutions or ideas to address any gaps identified through GIAs? We find our people can identify when a service unfairly impacts people in different ways, but can struggle to know how to address the need, particularly within tight budgets.
Yeah, look, that's a really good question. And we're all growing in our knowledge and case studies and examples around this. I think your best approach for that is our website, which has a lot of resources, as Bryony said, and we've got a really great hub for gender impact assessments, and those we're building those up over time as well. So keep coming back there. The other thing is to join communities of practice where, there are across the whole public sector, there are communities of practice. There are communities of practice for particular parts of the public sector and so on. Certain industry groups have their own, and share your learning there. We are not expecting you to reinvent the wheel with gender impact assessments. If you're in, say, for example, a library, I'm happy if you go to other libraries that have done this work, or all of the libraries get together and they say we need 15 gender impact assessments, and you divvy them up between you, and then each of you take what's being done by another service and then just shape that for your own particular context without reinventing the wheel and having to go through all of that process again. So I think that those communities of practice can be really valuable for the examples of what other organisations have done who are challenged by the same things.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Nikki, like I know, for example, our council community of practice that is run by MAV, I know that they, for a period of time, they have compiled and have a spreadsheet of all the GIAs so that the spreadsheet is like shared amongst all the members, so that if they want to see a GIA on XYZ, they can go into that spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So peer learning is great because sometimes there's like specific industry specific examples. So shared learning is excellent. I'm just looking for
we've got the communities of practice listed on our website as well. So you can go there, but we can probably make sure you get that as well.
Yeah, we'll share that in the follow-up email. Okay. I've got a question here from Chris, and I think this might be the last question. Yes, this is the last question. Okay. As duty holders preparing for the 2025 audit, could you please share any insights on particular data from previous audits that often needs to be modified or changed when CGEPS receives the first audit data upload?
Oh, that's a very technical question
is.
that the data team would be best to analyze. I know that people struggle with pay, reporting their pay, and a lot of duty holders have found in the past that when you because we want to be comparing like for like, so if people are on part-time salaries, they have to average you have to average up their part-time salary to a full-time salary so that we are not getting part-time salaries overinflating the pay gap there. Now, all of that's very technical. That is all explained really clearly if you follow the audit guidance. And I had a really detailed look at the audit guidance to make sure I could do it myself. If you follow that audit guidance to the letter, you will probably find that you don't make any mistakes. But we've also got extra checking mechanisms in the platform this time around. So when you put your data in, it'll point out where you might have made mistakes, things that don't look right, and ask you to check them. It'll also analyze your data for you as well for some of the things that are really crucial that we want you to provide to us in terms of your data. So you'll probably run into less problems there. I think a lot of organisations haven't been collecting really good data on sexual harassment. We've got the People Matters data, but we don't have a lot of organisations collecting good data on formal reporting of sexual harassment and where those reports are going. I know parental leave is often a difficult one for duty holders as well. But that's probably the about as detailed as I can get about the data problems, because I have a whole team that is doing that work, and they're not here today, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do remember seeing a lot of questions around remuneration coming through, calculating remuneration. So I think, yes. We do have one question. We've got 2 minutes. I've also just popped the feedback form in the chat. So we would love feedback because it just helps us improve. We just want to make sure that we're providing everyone with the right information, particularly, as an introduction to the Gender Equality Act. We have one last question from Alice and 1 minute left now. We had a look at the Manningham app created in a previous meeting. How can we implement that?
That's a really great question. Manningham developed that app themselves. We have had a look at it. It's fantastic. It would be really hard for Manningham to provide you with the support that I know they've got resource constraints as well. I would talk to your community of practice, the one that Bryony mentioned, the MAV community of practice, because I know there's been discussions about that in that community of practice. But you may have to design your own. But hopefully there's some way that you can get an idea of what it was that they did.
Yeah, thank you. And just for everyone's reference, the Manningham app was around GIA reporting, wasn't it, Nikki?
Yeah. Yes, it is. That's exactly right. Yeah. It's great. Loddon's designing their own at the moment. So that's fantastic to hear. Yeah, really good. Unfortunately, we'd love to do something like that, an app that you could all report into, but the legislation as it's currently designed does not allow us to do that. So it is actually at the moment on individual duty holders to do that themselves.
Yeah. We are bang on time, which is excellent. We've got through all the questions and the presentation. Nikki, thank you so much for giving such a broad overview. We hope this has been helpful for everyone. Thanks for such a great take up of this session. We had so many people register, so it's really great to see that people are really keen to get a deeper understanding into the Act and its requirements. Thank you all and have a wonderful rest of your day.